Welcome to a place where secrets don't stay buried and the truth always finds a voice. Here, the stories begin with the love, trust, and everyday routines, but they never end the way you expect. What starts as a simple doctor's visit can expose a marriage built on lies. What looks like devotion can hide betrayal, calculated down to the smallest detail. And sometimes, the most painful wounds don't come from one person, but from an entire family choosing silence over honesty. This channel is about real emotional reckonings, where manipulation hides behind smiles, where loyalty is tested, and where revenge doesn't come through destruction, but through truth. These are stories of survival, exposure, and justice that unfold quietly, powerfully, and inevitably. If you're drawn to shocking revelations, raw emotions, and the kind of endings that linger long after the story ends, you're exactly where you need to be. The blood test was supposed to be routine, nothing more than a formality squeezed between errands and deadlines. Sitting on the paper-covered exam table, there was already a sense of impatience, not fear. Life had trained expectations toward normal results. But when the doctor returned, the room felt smaller. The door clicked shut, and the silence stretched longer than it should have. The chart in those hands trembled just enough to be noticed. The words came carefully, almost reluctantly. Something was wrong. Not a deficiency, not stress, not a passing infection. The results showed prolonged exposure to substances that did not belong in a healthy body. Trace levels, consistent, deliberate. This wasn't an accident, it wasn't environmental, it was personal. Confusion hit first, then a cold wave of disbelief. Questions spilled out, but the doctor interrupted, voice low and urgent. Whoever shared meals, drinks, daily life should not. The advice that followed felt surreal, crossing a line no medical professional crossed lightly. Leave immediately for safety. Driving home felt automatic, like muscle memory without thought. Every red light became a moment to replay recent months. Unexplained fatigue, headaches brushed off, moments of dizziness laughed away. Each memory rearranged itself into something darker. Dinner plates already served, vitamins handed over with concern, coffee mugs refills before they were empty. At home, everything looked the same. The smile waiting inside was warm, familiar, practiced. Concern poured out when the doctor's visit was mentioned. Too much concern. Offers to cook, to rest, to take care of everything. Hands that once felt safe now felt calculated. Later that night, while the house slept, the truth began to surface quietly. Online searches, medical journals, insurance documents tucked into a drawer that had never been opened before, a policy recently updated, a beneficiary clearly named, dates that aligned far too well with the symptoms. The betrayal wasn't loud. It didn't arrive in a dramatic confession or a violent outburst. It revealed itself in the smallest details, the careful patience, the timing, the way sickness had been treated as an opportunity instead of a warning. The blood test didn't just expose a medical crisis, it exposed intent. It peeled back years of lies disguised as devotion and transformed love into something unrecognizable. And from that moment on, survival became the quiet beginning of justice. Devotion had always been the easiest part to believe. It lived in small gestures that looked thoughtful to anyone watching. Coffee made before sunrise, texts checking in during the day, hands resting gently on a shoulder when the world felt heavy. Friends called it luck. Family called it stability. From the inside, it felt like safety wrapped in routine. But lies don't arrive fully formed. They grow quietly, stitched into ordinary days. The first fracture appeared in moments that felt too perfect. Answers came before questions were asked. Apologies arrived without understanding what had gone wrong. There was an odd precision to everything, like lines memorized in advance. Love began to feel rehearsed. Then came the inconsistencies. Phone calls taken outside, passwords changed casually without explanation, financial statements that didn't quite add up, brushed off with jokes about budgeting mistakes. Each detail alone seemed harmless. Together, they formed a pattern that refused to be ignored. Affection became strategic. Concern peaked whenever weakness showed. Illness was met with intense caretaking, almost enthusiasm. Meals were insisted on, supplements were pushed. Rest was encouraged in a way that felt less like kindness and more like control. The more vulnerable the body felt, the more attentive the husband became. Late nights turned into quiet investigations. Bank records revealed accounts never discussed. Insurance policies told a story that conversations never had. Coverage expanded, clauses updated, a future planned carefully without consent or knowledge. The most painful discovery wasn't financial or legal, it was emotional. Messages hidden deep in an old device revealed a second life. Intimate conversations with someone who knew everything: fears, habits, schedules, weaknesses. The betrayal wasn't just physical or romantic, it was collaborative. Two people discussing how patience would pay off, how timing mattered, how appearances had to stay intact. Every memory rewrote itself. Vacations now looked like alibis. Arguments felt staged. Apologies sounded manipulative in hindsight. The marriage hadn't been falling apart. It had been carefully managed. Love hadn't disappeared overnight. It had been replaced slowly, with calculation masquerading as commitment. Trust wasn't broken in a single moment. It was diluted day by day until nothing pure remained. The realization settled heavily but clearly. Devotion was never real, only useful. And once the truth is seen that clearly, pretending becomes impossible. It was easier to believe one person could lie than to accept that an entire family could stay quiet. Trust had extended beyond a marriage, settling into shared holidays, Sunday dinners, and casual conversations that felt safe. Laughter-filled rooms where secrets were already seated at the table. The first hint came in the form of discomfort. Conversations stopped when footsteps entered the room. Glances passed too quickly to follow. Sympathy arrived before explanations were given. It felt misplaced, excessive, like condolences offered too early. Questions were met with soft deflections. "You're overthinking. He loves you. Every marriage has phases." The reassurance felt rehearsed, identical across different mouths, as if everyone had agreed on the same script. No one asked how things truly felt. No one wanted details. The truth surfaced slowly, painfully, through cracks no one bothered to seal. An overheard phone call late at night, a whispered argument behind a closed door that ended the moment presence was sensed. A cousin who drank too much one evening and let guilt loosen the tongue just enough. This was never supposed to go that far, slipped out before silence rushed back in. They had known for years. Not everything, but enough. Enough to question intentions, enough to see patterns, enough to warn. Instead, they chose peace at family gatherings over honesty, comfort over courage. They protected the image of a good son, a reliable brother, a dependable man, at the cost of someone else's safety. The most devastating part wasn't the knowledge itself, but the justification. Fear of conflict, fear of being blamed, fear of breaking the family apart. Silence became a shared responsibility, passed around like tradition. Each person convinced themselves it wasn't their place to intervene. When confronted, tears followed, excuses spilled out, claims of ignorance suddenly appeared, contradicting past remarks and old messages that still existed. Apologies sounded hollow, weighed down by relief that the secret was finally exposed without their help. Family photos on the walls became evidence of complicity. Smiles captured moments when danger was already present. Every embrace remembered differently now, tinged with betrayal, not just from one person, but from many. They hadn't needed to act. They only needed to speak. By choosing silence, they allowed deception to grow roots, to flourish unchecked, to nearly succeed. And silence, once exposed, became the loudest confession of all. Revenge didn't arrive as anger or destruction. It came as clarity. After everything uncovered, there was no urge to scream or shatter what remained. Chaos would have been too easy, too generous. Truth required patience, and patience had already been learned the hard way. Every fact was gathered quietly. Medical reports were copied, financial records were printed and organized by date. Messages, emails, and voice notes were preserved exactly as they were, untouched and undeniable. Nothing was exaggerated, nothing was added. Lies didn't need help collapsing. The husband continued performing devotion, unaware the performance was over. Apologies grew frequent, affection increased, promises poured out about the future, about fixing what was broken. Watching it all felt surreal, like observing a character who didn't realize the script had leaked. The exposure began where lies felt safest. An attorney received the full story without interruption. A doctor confirmed what the blood work already proved. An investigator traced patterns that connected money, timing, and intent with unsettling precision. Each professional reacted the same way, quiet focus followed by concern that quickly turned serious. Family gatherings became unbearable, but necessary. Calm replaced fear. When questions came, answers were no longer softened. Documents spoke louder than emotion ever could. Screens were turned. Dates were pointed out. Silence fell hard, heavier than any accusation. Faces drained of color as realization spread that denial was no longer possible. The husband tried to regain control through charm, then through anger, then through blame. None of it mattered. Facts don't argue. They don't shout. They simply exist. And once revealed, they can't be erased. Friends who once admired the marriage now looked away in disbelief. Family members who chose silence struggled to explain themselves. Reputation unraveled faster than expected, not because of rumors, but because truth traveled cleanly, without distortion. There was no public spectacle, no dramatic confrontation. Consequences arrived methodically. Legal action, separation, investigation. Each step followed the next with cold precision. The life built on deception couldn't withstand daylight. What remained afterward wasn't emptiness, it was relief. Strength returned with every honest breath. Control shifted without force. The person who once orchestrated everything was left reacting, scrambling, exposed. Revenge didn't require destruction. Lies collapsed under their own weight once the truth was allowed to stand. And that was more satisfying than anything chaos could have delivered. If this story made you pause, think, or feel something you didn't expect, don't forget to show your support. Hit the like button. It helps these stories reach the people who need to hear them. Subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories where hidden betrayals come to light and the truth always has the final word. And turn on notifications so you never miss the next chapter. Until next time, remember, lies can survive in silence, but truth always wins when it's finally spoken.